Good afternoon and welcome to the All Hands Staff Meeting. My name is Javier Rodriguez and I am the Director of Workforce Planning here at Campus Shared Services. And I have the privilege of introducing Peggy Houston, the Chief Operating Officer. Welcome, Peggy.
Thank you, Javier.
You're welcome. Over the next 45 minutes, we have several agenda topics that we will be covering. First up is going to be updates on CSS overall. Then we're going to have three of our wonderful colleagues here joining us to provide us with some updates on some improvement work that they're doing in their current jobs. And then finally, we're going to have a QA session with the audience here, where we're going to ask the audience the question of how can we enhance CSS reputation, both with campus customers and within our own team. So first up, update on CSS, Peggy.
All right, some updates. So the first thing I'm going to touch on and spend a couple of minutes on is that on October 13th, so just a few weeks away, I am going to be celebrating my second year anniversary at CSS. Believe it or not, it's been 2 years already. And I feel the same way today that I did the day I started to work here, that it is an honor to work with all of you. And I feel that you are the best of the best, and you're doing an unbelievable job here for UC Berkeley, and I want to acknowledge that. I'm proud to say that I'm a part of this organization. It's challenging times right now in higher ed, and for the University of California at Berkeley, and also for Campus Shared Services here. But you are demonstrating what it means to be a high-performing service organization at Berkeley and helping to sustain the mission of UC Berkeley. The value or contributions of Berkeley for the state of California, for our country, and for our world started long before any of us came to work here, and it's going to continue well after our time here at Berkeley. But we have an important role to learn from those who came before us and to make things just a little bit better for those who are going to come after us. My vision for the future of CSS is that we are going to have an organization that is a highly desirable place to work. It will be known for its professionalism of its staff, for its nimbleness and ability to respond to the changes and campus needs, and for its excellent support services. I think we're well on our way toward my vision, or toward making my vision a reality, and I invite you to engage in your own vision of CSS and to make it happen. So speaking of challenges, on to the next topic, and that's budget. The good news is I am pleased to announce that we received what we asked in our budget request. So the request was granted, and that is good news, and that is also due to the wonderful work that you've been doing here at CSS. I want you to understand, though, that the budget request does include reducing costs in fiscal year 17. The plan is to leverage attrition whenever possible over the next year, and I have no plans for layoffs at this time. It does require that we continue to reduce our workload through continuous improvement, that we continually look for ways to do things in a smarter way or a simpler way. And everyone has work to do in that area. So when I hear we are doing the same work with fewer people, the first question I'm going to have for you is, what have we done to try to improve upon that? Because that's where we need to start. Next, I want to follow up on some of the feedback that we've received over the last few months through a number of channels. So back in the spring, we had some RA forums, and we also had an RA survey, Research Administration survey. The analysis is being wrapped up on that, and we are going to be presenting the results at the next CSS RA All Hands meeting, which is on the 26th of this month. We also had a staff opinion survey that Sid Reel in the Office of Equity and Inclusion conducted for us, and those results are also being wrapped up, and we'll be communicating that to all of CSS by the end of September. Other high priority areas that we've been focusing on, ServiceNow in CSS HR. The next release is scheduled for November. And the highlights for that release are funding change requests and classification requests, and also approval workflow. If you don't know what ServiceNow is, or what the components that I just mentioned are, I'm going to suggest that you go and talk with one of your HR colleagues and find out all about what the ServiceNow project is. And then Research Administration End-to-End Initiative. I want to say a few things about that. So Vice Chancellor Paul Alivisatos has identified 3 pillars now that we are focusing on in this initiative. Those 3 pillars include process improvement, what's being referred to as the service interface, or what was formerly called regional model, and still some people are calling it regional model. And the third area then is culture. So I'll take the first one, process. What are we doing in the process area? First of all, this includes the Sponsored Projects Office, Contracts and Grants Office, which is located in the Controller's Office, CSS, and then also academic units across the campus. All of these groups are working together to assess pain points and identifying areas of waste in the processes, and we're prioritizing those processes. So over the summer, we've been working on award setup. The analysis has been completed, and now they are working on implementing the improvements. The next process that they're going to be focusing on is proposal development and submission. So that one is just getting underway. If you don't know what I'm talking about with respect to research administration end-to-end or this process work, I suggest that you talk to one of your RA colleagues and find out all about it and get more information. In the area of the service interface or regional model, a committee is currently being formed that will be looking at ideas, and what they're going to be looking at is, are there structural changes that we could make in the way that we're delivering services that would improve upon the service? So they will have a goal of December 15th to have a recommendation of some implementable ideas for the next semester, the spring. And then the third area, culture, it will also have a committee that has not happened yet. That committee hasn't been formed yet, so it's still in very early initiation stage. And the last point I want to bring up is office hours, my office hours that I hold here at 4th Street and then also at various locations on campus. The number of attendees is growing with each one of the office hours, and the questions and the conversation that we're having in those sessions is getting richer. So I encourage you to attend if your schedule allows, and meet up with some of your colleagues and participate in the discussion and bringing forward what's been on your mind also. So I appreciate hearing from others during those office hours. So I'm going to transition now back to Javier. And Javier, tell us now what your new role is in workforce planning.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my new role as a workforce director, planning of workforce development. One of the things that I'm looking at is how can we, as an organization and as a workforce, improve what we do and how we do things in alignment with the overall mission of the campus. And so, that's a very broad scope, but at the same time, what can we do to improve in how we do our jobs? And what I'm looking at is, from a skills development perspective, what skills do we need? What new skills do we need? And what training programs can we put together in alignment with those skills that we need development in? A really good example of that is the project I'm working on with regards to the job description. We're going to work on, over the next year, developing and updating everybody's job description, so we're actually sure that everybody has the job description that actually reflects what we are all doing, versus in some cases there's people that have had job descriptions and their jobs have transitioned over time and transformed into something different. And it starts as a baseline to understand what job are we supposed to be doing. So that's one of the major projects that we're working on in FY17.
Great.
Okay. So the next agenda item here is where we're talking about continually improving our processes. And here we have a panel, and each panel member here are going to be talking about what they do in their current jobs and what the projects they're working on and how they're using continuous improvement to improve their projects. So first off is Cara Lynn. She's with CSS Training and Development, and she's going to talk about how she trained and acclimated almost 40 new RAs with an RA mentoring program and how improvements were made based on feedback from the first cohort to future cohorts. Cara?
Thanks very much, Javier.
Yep.
The RA mentoring program was really created out of a need to have development procedures delivered in a really systematic way to all Berkeley research administrators. I could see that we needed a more structured in-house training partnership, and that was to get RAs of all different levels up to the same knowledge base and process understanding that every RA in CSS use with their day-to-day operations. Really following continuous improvement objectives, I created the program following a tiered learning structure, and this was so any RA could follow it, but possibly even later on teach it themselves. I presented the program to CSS leadership and began teaching to the first new cohort back in April. So far, we have had 3 separate cohorts, and they've been conducted to over 40 new RAs based on a very intensive 5-week program, 2 hours per day. This really models how any CSS research administrator would be mentored by their team leads or supervisors already in their in-house units. Through this, we were really able to create an open learning environment and where we could continually improve on course materials and delivery based on what the trainees themselves thought the program was going through. This really follows Berkeley's method of go with the flow, which we all used on the daily. And this open forum brought a level of standardization to the mentorship methodology, but it also had a lot of other benefits, which were encouraging networking throughout the RAs of all different levels and all different teams. It provided a wide information base that was pulled from the experience and the knowledge of so many skilled and talented RAs that now work for UC Berkeley. And it built a strong sense of camaraderie between the RA community, and it taught everyone the get or done method, which is also something that Berkeley uses often. I have been very proud of this program and very proud of all of the RAs that I've worked with through it. Thank you.
So one question. So what types of challenges did you face when implementing your ideas?
Challenges. I would say the first one is obviously a trust issue. I was working with all of the CSS RA managers and supervisors, and it was important that they trusted that the program was going to be useful and beneficial because I was taking out a lot of their new RAs for 2 hours every day for a substantial amount of time. And I think that making sure that I had their buy-in was going to really help the program be successful. I also thought that there were areas that we could enhance and benefit already established programs, such as the Research Administration Professional Development Program, aka RAPDP. So I wanted to make sure that I was enhancing what had already been established to a really great program and making benefits where I could.
Okay. And how does your team stay nimble and ready for change?
I think listening is a huge part of that. I definitely feel that talking to RAs or any member of staff within CSS or campus and trying to absorb as much information as possible, think on it, and then deliver something back that's going to be helpful to CSS, but to campus as a whole.
Okay, excellent job, Carolyn.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right, next up. Round of applause. Very nice. So next up we have Noah Mcgee with CSS IT, and he's here to talk about the Faculty Innovation Lab, which is a collaboration they're working on for campus with some of our IT partners and how they've been able to make improvements along the way. Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's really more about our research support on campus. CSS IT has been doing support of faculty research labs ever since we started, but we're almost always sort of in a reactive mode. We do things like fix printers or fix network connections that have broken, or help with scientific instruments, not with instruments themselves, but with like the computers that they're connected to, but only when they've broken. So we're really trying to focus on creating a program that's going to help them ahead of time. It's being led by Jonathan Kogelman, who many of you may have worked with. Used to work for the College of Chemistry and has a lot of experience supporting labs. And so we want to help faculty before they have a problem. We want to go in ahead of time and consult with them on their network connections, on the desktop computers they use, and also help them find better ways to work with their data retention and with security, which is a major problem on campus right now, IT security, and especially in the labs where they don't have the expertise to deal with IT security. And we also want to connect them with other campus resources for things like high performance computing and classroom technology. So far, we've connected with about 12 faculty members, just helping them do simple things like desktop backup and software installations, just making their lives easier on a day-to-day basis, but also then working with them on really exciting things like helping them figure out how to take large data sets from DNA sequencing and find a good place to store that. Our goal in the upcoming year is to try to make contact and work with faculty as they're onboarded, so that we're actually contacting them as they're planning their research and building their labs. And one of the most exciting things that Javier is sort of mentioning there that we've been doing is building partnerships with other IT groups on campus. We're working with Central IT's research IT support, and they're the ones that run the high performance computing, and then with the library's help, do a lot of work with data preservation for faculty. And we're also working with Educational Technology Services, who are the experts on campus on classroom technology. So we meet with them once a week in ETS. They have a facility called the Academic Innovation Studio in Dwinell. And so all three of our groups meet there once a week for a drop-in session so that faculty or lab managers can come and talk about their technology needs, whether it's for the classroom or for their labs.
So what type of challenges have you faced when implementing your ideas?
The funny thing is just people knowing that we exist. And it's crazy, we go into a lab and talk to a faculty member and they say, we didn't know there was IT support on campus. And so just, they're in their own little worlds of trying to figure out how to do their research. And they need to know that we're available to them. And we've actually created some handouts that let them know about all the different IT services on campus, not just ours, but things that IST's research support or ETS has to offer to them.
Okay. Excellent job, Noel. Thank you.
Thanks.
And last but not least is Alex Gomez. And Alex works for CSS Recruiting. And you're going to talk about what you tell people when you're trying to attract them to join UC Berkeley or CSS.
Thank you. So we wanted to talk today a little bit about recruitment now for the university and for CSS, and some of the things that we do as a recruitment team in order to attract individuals and some of those conversations that we have to have around attracting talent to campus. As everyone knows, we've had better press years, and so we often have to have some of those difficult conversations up front, and where we usually always start is by acknowledging what those difficulties and challenges are, and then pivoting to what we see as the employee value proposition of why an individual would want to come work at the University of California, Berkeley, right? The employee value proposition is a very talent acquisition recruitment term for really aiming at the intrinsic and extrinsic benefits of working for an organization. So the extrinsic benefits, things like compensation and benefits, will always be what the university offers, and those are very not subject to change, right? But really highlighting the intrinsic values of working for an organization and knowing that a general employee satisfaction in a job is more than just remuneration. It's more than just the compensation or the benefits. So some of the things that we really target in recruitment are really highlighting the opportunities that the university provides, both in times of challenges, opportunity to be that change agent and really affect change in an in an organization, opportunities for career development through various programs that we have, career mobility across such a large organization, as well as professional development opportunities, both here in your department, but all throughout campus. We also focus heavily on the organization itself, so the prestige of a 148-year-old institution. I would challenge everyone to read the first few paragraphs of our Wikipedia page in terms of 74 Nobel laureates, 117 gold Olympic medals, and that's just gold. And anyone that watched the Olympics saw that our alumni and students won more medals in some small countries. 20 Academy Awards, I thought was a really good metric. Because no one ever thinks of that, right? They're always thinking about the 45 MacArthur Genius Awards. But really highlighting the other values that we have as an organization in terms of diversity and being a family-friendly environment, really caring about the work-life balance. And then we also focus heavily on the work that we do and the impact that our work has, both in terms of the university's mission for research, teaching, and community service, and how that affects both the residents of California, the people in the nation, as well as the world. And then lastly, we really focus on the people, because a lot of you that have worked at, similar to myself, at the university for quite a while, the people that you work with are one of the things that keep you here. The camaraderie, the people management, again, a very family-oriented environment, which really circles back to when we do have to have those difficult conversations up front when recruiting people, our best tool is to really make it personal and to tell them our story and how we experience university, how we experience CSS, our leaders at CSS, and the direction and the mission of the university. So in a nutshell, that's the employee value proposition that we try and utilize in recruitment when marketing positions to candidates.
Alex, one follow-up question. Is there one thing that really stands out, like with the changing workforce out there, that looking for jobs that impresses people to want to join UC Berkeley, or is it just the variety of everything that you've mentioned?
I could talk for an hour on that, but I think that the most effective answer to your question would be that the one thing that stands out to me is that when we are most effective is when everyone in the room and everyone on video are recruiters as well. My team of 10 recruiters cannot recruit every single person in this 8,000 staff campus, 30,000 employees total. These stories are told by the employees and the managers who are hiring them. These stories are told by our faculty, by our students and our staff, whose impacts we make in terms of our jobs and our day-to-day. So the most important aspect, again, is that all of our employees are recruiters and not just the recruitment team.
Excellent point. Thank you, Alex. All right, so now I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Peggy.
Thank you, Javier. And thanks to all of you for speaking about what you're working on. It speaks to the diversity of the services that we provide for UC Berkeley, and also the critical nature of the work that we do, supporting research administration. Research is the heart of the mission here, and being able to attract the talent that we want here at UC Berkeley. It's all great work. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to move on now to Q&A. And we have some questions that have come in through the Ask Peggy and then also through the office hours. So I'll repeat some of the questions that came in through there. And I'm going to ask for audience participation in these questions also. So I'm going to take the first one, and then I'm going to ask for some help on the rest of them. So the first question is, and this came in through one of the office hours, was how are we supporting CSS staff with abusive customers? And that it's not just faculty, sometimes there's also our staff colleagues in units on campus that are also challenging. So I want to first respond and say that I want everybody in CSS to know that the executive leadership on campus want a respectful environment where we can interact with each other in a productive manner. So again, we are in challenging times, and it is such a huge change in the way that we do business right now on the campus, and that brings about frustrations at different levels. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do things, and then also we've got new processes, and so if I'm the one that's doing the process, it's new to me, so I'm still trying to figure it out, and if I'm on the receiving end of that process, it's new to me, and I'm still trying to figure it out. So these all, can create frustrations. So I want to say that, that for somebody that's cranky, sometimes I just want to give them a little space to be cranky. That said, there's a difference between cranky and disrespectful. And on the cranky side, we have created some helpful tips that have been emailed out. And I suggest that, I don't say this very often, but I suggest that you print these off and that you put them someplace so that they're convenient should you be in a situation where you want to refer to them. Like on the phone is a good place because they can't see you reading it, as they're not so happy on the other end of the phone, and you can be thinking about how you're going to respond in the particular situation. And we are working to get these posted in a location that will be available to everybody for easy access too. But for now, like I said, I suggest that you print that off so that it's convenient. In the case where somebody's being disrespectful, I want to make sure that everybody knows you do not have to tolerate disrespect. And that if somebody is being disrespectful to you, I need to know about it so that I can do something about it. So I need for you to let me know so that I can respond to it. It doesn't need to be you. It can get handed off, and we can work on how we respond to the individual. But you do not have to tolerate that. Okay, so the next question. The next question is, how should we as individuals improve the CSS reputation with campus? So I'm looking for somebody to help with that one. Lori Tannehill.
Hello, this is Lori Tannehill, Service Director for Teams 1, 3, and 5. And I think our reputation on campus is really about partnering with our clients. And I think one of the ways that we can be a good partner is to ask for their feedback and then really listen. Listen not so much with an intent to respond immediately, but listen to really understand. Sometimes if we jump to solution a little bit too quickly, they don't necessarily feel heard. And then, document the response or document rather your understanding of what their need is, and use that to inform our process improvement efforts or to follow up appropriately. So if you see a trend, when you're hearing the same feedback from multiple clients, think about how that might feed into some of our process improvement efforts. And then I think when we do act on this feedback and our clients really feel heard in how we've designed our processes, then I think it's also easier for us at that point to go out and speak to the benefits of using CSS and using our processes, because we've incorporated that feedback and we've demonstrated that value in that partnership. So that's I think listening, and then having a measured and appropriate response to what we've heard.
I like it. I also like that there's also a sense of partnership there. That some of the challenges are not just for CSS to resolve. That it's often we're dealing with something that's a challenge for the campus, and but it's the individual. It comes down to the individuals trying to work together to resolve the situation. So I like the sense of partnership there also. Yeah, that's great.
Anybody else? Thoughts?
Okay. The next question here is, how are we as individuals improving the morale during times of change within our own groups? And what are ways that we're doing this right now? So thoughts about this one? Who's that?
Glenn.
Glenn Cruz.
Hello, Glenn Cruz with CSS IT. I'm the supervisor for procurement, provisioning, and off-grid. That's a desktop support team that covers support groups that are way off campus, like Salinas, so pretty far out there. One of the things we do in the morning for my team is we do a morning huddle. So the first 3 questions they have to come to mind in this morning huddle, and this morning huddle takes about 10 minutes or less, is what you do yesterday, what are you doing today, and what is blocking you. So they go through that every morning, Monday through Friday, about at 8:30. Both teams do it, and they work it out, and it takes sometimes 15, sometimes 30 minutes, and they're done for the day, and they get their day going. It's hard to start off at first. It was a struggle. We had challenges at the time. My team is actually here to talk about those struggles, but it's very effective, and it makes their day go by easier. I mean, that little time of 15 minutes or less makes a big time investment on the later day and the later week. So it's worth a shot. So maybe my team could probably, Eric, you want to talk about it a little bit, about the challenges we faced at first?
Yeah. So we tried to start this off a couple of times, and it worked for a while, and then it kind of dropped off. Initially, it wasn't the value wasn't really seen because oftentimes we're just meeting for maybe 5 minutes, and it was like, oh, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm gonna follow up with this client, so and so. But the more we did it, the more we realized how much of a sense of camaraderie it actually brought to our team. So every day, I might go an entire day without seeing one of my team members, rarely, but it happens, where you might not necessarily see your team member for an entire day. But these morning huddles really do bring you all together and actually give you a sense of what your group's purpose is. And that was one of the bigger value adds that I found. And also you get a chance to propose any problems that you're having with your process or day-to-day operations with the entire team and say, hey, I noticed this thing. I think maybe we can work on this. What do you guys think? And just kind of field your team for that information. It provides a more like personal touch over like an email message, I'd say. Yeah.
Eric, give us an idea of how long it took before you began to think, oh, this is actually kind of helpful.
I would say, we tried it very briefly for maybe a week or something like that, and then we dropped it for, I think, 3 weeks, picked it back up again, and then it started catching on. So
it took a month or two before it started to gel?
Yeah, I'd say about a month, month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But after now, just to be clear, most of our meetings are about 5 to 10 minutes. So they're really not a huge time investment. But sometimes, when we really do need that meeting, we can take 30, 40 minutes just discussing larger issues. And you'd be surprised how often these things, bigger issues do kind of get brushed over. And then when you're actually put in that situation and feel comfortable enough to bring it up, then you can really get into some deeper things.
Yeah.
Process-wise.
That's great. Anybody else on your team? Yeah.
Yeah, Stuart Damon. Just a real-world example. I had a ticket to have a MacBook repaired where the requester wanted the touchpad, the battery, and another component repaired. And basically, he wanted us to provide price quotes for the components and assurance that if he couldn't get it to work, we could return it. Oh. And the benefit of the morning meeting is I had our procurement person right there, I had the technicians right there, I had the team lead right there. So I just shot it out there. This doesn't sound good to me. What's our policy? Yeah. So within just a matter of seconds, I got basically all my answers on how to proceed. So it just fast-tracked the whole process. And so it just takes a few minutes, but the benefits are tremendous.
That's great. Great example. Any other ideas on that?
So, yeah, we have a lot of things to say. Jesse Garcia, team lead for the teams that Glenn mentioned. the major thing that was required from the team, and is still continuously required, is their willingness to help the other members. And that's part of the issue that we faced in the beginning with setting it up. We didn't have the camaraderie on that first day for those morning huddles. But meeting regularly, we work together, and it pushed us to rely on each other, and it's pushing us. You need the team to be willing to lend a hand and pick somebody up when they're down. There's times that you can get a surprise assignment that day in that morning huddle, but if you're not of that disposition to help out, you're not going to be contributing to the success. So that's what really has helped us to meet regularly, encourage each other to help out.
That's great. It sounds kind of like the life cycle of a team, you know, the forming, storming, norming, performing, that you had to go through those phases to get to the, it sounds like you're performing now. It's working, yeah. Great.
So Nick Inslee from Process Transformation Innovation. I just want to mention one other huge benefit to doing those kind of regular team meetings. So many of the problems that we deal with on a regular basis or things that come up, somebody else in your group has already faced. So rather than trying to start from zero and trying to figure out how to solve this, when you bring up those problems that you're trying to figure out that day, someone on your team may already have the answer, and bringing that up in those team meetings is a great way to just get ahead of the problem.
Great. Thanks, Nick.
Hi, Kendall Molam from CSS Team 2 URSO, and I'm a business analyst. One of the things we have used heavily, and I think to success, is just the tools at hand, and we have been using Be Connected a lot, and using Google Sheets and BDocs for maintaining information about especially the changing processes that come up. And it's a way, what I find is that when things are changing so much, that it could be that communication's a key point. It can break down, or it can become too time consuming. And this is a way that we communicate a lot with using documents that have clarified our process internally. Also documents to just track items, and it's a way that we can communicate and collaborate without perhaps taking a lot of time. It also makes a lot of our work and responses to our customers more consistent, because we have that documented. It reduces stress, I think, a little bit, because it's a source of reference for the people who are undergoing the change. So that, and it leverages our own knowledge about a change or a process. So that has actually, I think we've used it to a very strong advantage, that simple and available tool.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Any other questions from the audience?
And I've got one more here. Are there plans to re-look at the scope of work we do for our reduced staff levels? With the administrative gaps now on campus, the trend seems to be that CSS should be doing that when it's not really in scope. Thoughts about this one? Can I repeat the question? Yeah. So are there plans to re-look at the scope of work we do with our reduced staffing levels? With the administrative gaps now on campus, the trend seems to be CSS should be doing that when it's not really in our scope. So I think this is about, you know, this, and everybody's getting squeezed right now across the campus. And so there's more and more things that are in units on campus that are now being considered, oh, maybe this could be in CSS, so that they wouldn't have to do it in the unit anymore. So thoughts about that?
Eric?
So I only really have the IT perspective on this, but
Yeah.
from
It's happening in IT too.
oh, I'm aware. No, I see this more as like being caught at the supervisor level. I think, at least for IT, we were stretched very wide in our services, and maybe we were doing things that weren't explicitly detailed in our core services. And at the supervisor level, that's where it's determined whether or not we should be doing all of these, peripheral services. And yeah, I mean, I can go into detail on specific services, but at some point, I think it makes sense for us to cut back on some minor services that we're doing for clients that we're not explicitly, selling or marketing, and then just say, these are actually the things we do, and we're not going to be doing. We have done these things in the past, but we're not going to do them moving forward because they're not core to our services.
Other thoughts?
Hi, this is Chris Demarco with the Process Transformation and Innovation Team. I think this speaks really loudly to what the message we're trying to put out there with continuous improvement really is, with the backbone of being a joint and collaborative problem-solving institution. And I think we're really trying to work smarter. If we all work smarter and we solve problems more efficiently, we'll be able to handle more work. And I think in its simplest form, that's what we're trying to do with continuous improvement.
It's Glenn again. Hi.
Hi, Glenn again.
So when we got our RIF, or reduction in force, the IT leadership team, we actually went into a meeting and drew out like 3 layers of what's our core services, what can we handle, and what can we kind of handle, and what is really out of scope. Maybe it's something that, as a team in all the departments here in CSS, is maybe you have to sit down with your team or your leadership and see what is your core value, what your core services are, and then then trend it out and see what's really out of scope to see what you could actually handle. So that might help. That might help us out to see what's really out of scope and say, go to our customers and maybe say, hey, this is really out of scope for us, and this is something that's not in our core services or not even close to our core services. So yeah, just a thought.
That's great. All of those things actually that you just mentioned are really helpful, and they're all being taken into consideration. This question is a really good question, and this is a prime example of this is a campus problem to solve, that this is not just CSS. We're all in this boat. And those conversations need to happen. And so it's something that's going to be ongoing now for a while as things still continue to shift about where does the work belong? Where does it make sense? It's all part of continuous improvement, and some tough conversations in order to figure out where does it belong. And those conversations have started, and actually I would say in the research administration end to end, that's exactly the type of conversation that's happening in that initiative right now, is what are we trying to do from the beginning of preparing a research proposal all the way through closing that research proposal, all of the different pieces, where do they belong on campus, what's the most efficient way of doing that support for our research. So with that, we're just about it's time to wrap up. So I'm going to turn it back over to Javier to wrap up for us.
Thank you, Peggy. So a couple of quick announcements before we sign off. A survey about this meeting will be coming out soon. So please look for it and give us your feedback. Our next all staff meeting, and the last one for 2016, would be sometime earlier mid-December. So please watch for the memos or the announcements. And lastly, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. It looks like we had 28 people here in audience and 246 computers logged in, so that's probably a lot more than 246 people out there. So thank you everybody for taking the time in your busy days to join us. We really appreciate it, and a special thanks to our panel for joining us here today, and have a nice day.